I love a good intro music. I'm over here rocking that one.
Okay.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Persia, Nicole, and welcome to yet another amazing conversation, Minorities Mental Health Back to School. Thank you to our sponsor, Shepherd Pratt and Allen Maryland, for helping us put this event together. As a mama and someone who is one of the biggest cheerleaders for our youth, I'm very excited about this conversation. We have amazing panelists, and I get to host it with this guy right here.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It's Ryan the Lion from Magic 95.9. Very excited to be here. Brand new school year. A lot of things to talk about. A lot of information to get. And we got some great guests, Perj.
Yeah,
some
man.
Great guests tonight. Yeah. Well, look. Our first guest is Tisha Edwards. She's the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. Tisha, how are you doing?
I am great and very happy to be here.
Well, hey, look, Tisha. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Tish.
So, yes, I'm Tisha Edwards, Executive Director for the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, and our organization is all about young people and their families and positioning them to thrive in Baltimore. I'm a former high school principal, former chief of staff of the school system, former interim CEO of the school system. So I have deep knowledge and relationships in the community working with children, and I'm really happy to be have an office in city government where the only thing I get to think about all day, every day is how to position children for success. So it's really exciting.
That is
I love
awesome.
that. I already had like 5 questions, as you were saying, former this, former that.
Got a lot of titles there.
Right. Next up, I want to welcome Ashley Claiborne from Shepherd Pratt. Hey, Ash.
Hi, I don't know how I'm going to follow Miss Edwards, but I'm an inpatient social worker at Shepherd Pratt. I work on the adolescent co-ed mood disorder unit. So basically, we get a lot of kids who, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, more so on those lines, post-traumatic stress disorder. So a lot of the issues that kids are experiencing, and it has kind of spiked up in the pandemic. So over the pandemic, we got so many kids who kind of all had the same issues. So I am very excited to kind of share my information as an actual inpatient social worker, working with children who are at the height of, their mental health crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're excited for this conversation.
Yeah. We'll definitely get some great info from you. I can't wait as well. Our next guest is Shalera Sessions with Maryland Behavioral Health Administration. What's going on?
Hey, everyone. Good evening. I would like to say happy Back to School Month. This is the final day of Back to School Month. So so I'm excited to be here. Yes, I'm Shalera Sessions. I am a clinical social worker with over 21 years of experience. I work as a chief of rural health and school-based programs with the Behavioral Health Administration in the Child, Adolescent, and Young Adult Services Division. Some of my former experiences are I've been a therapist, school social worker, clinical director, and child and adolescent coordinator. As you see, I have a passion for working with children and families. And some other highlights, I am very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In 2019, I was one of the Maryland Daily Record Maryland Top 100 Women. I serve as a social work field supervisor for a couple of universities here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And I'm the co-founder of the Lower Shore LGBTQ Coalition here on the Rural Eastern Shore. And last June, I was one of the persons that spearheaded the Black Lives Matter Boulevard renaming in Salisbury, Maryland. So here, and I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the Links Incorporated.
Well, come on.
All right, Soror.
What happened? There was no more room on the paper.
Yes, Soror Edwards.
Don't let the pink fool you. It's just light red.
Absolutely. Love it. Yes.
Well, I love you, ladies. So I put the red underneath my brim because I knew you all would be here. You know what I mean? I came for real. Next, let's bring to the party because we can't miss out on this. Mental health advocate Crystal Dorsey, who also has all your members from Morning Star Baptist Church watching tonight. So shout out to all the members of Morning Star Baptist Church. Crystal, they are waiting for all of this amazingness.
Oh my goodness. I'm so happy to be here with all you ladies and you as well, Ryan. My name again is Crystal Dorsey. I operate as an author, illustrator, and founder of I Spy Kids Culture. I'm also a mental health advocate and most recently clinical mental health counselor. I've always, much like the other ladies, been so passionate about the youth, particularly in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, seeing what I can do to help go back and grab their hands and pull them forward. What can I do? And so that's from profession to volunteer work and child advocacy, counseling centers, journal publications, all of those things. And so I'm really excited for this conversation tonight. And yes, hello to my Morningstar family. I'm excited for joining on tonight for this conversation.
The squad is here.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome. It is definitely a pleasure to have you all here. And let's get right into it. Now, we talked about back to school, right? You know, this is day 2, right? Day 2, back to school. The transition has been very interesting. There's been some issues, I'm sure. Talking to some of these kids, they're very excited about going back to school. Some maybe not so much. But Crystal, I'll pose this question to you as a mental health advocate. In the past year and a half with the whole virtual learning situation, now making that transition back into the classroom, what are some of those experiences that you've dealt with kids, you know, during this whole past year, during this pandemic? Tell me a little bit about what you've, you know, saw, heard, what have, you know, you talked to the kids about, what are they saying?
Yes, of course. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was just this sense of helplessness. The kids have transitioned to this virtual learning as like that's their platform, and it's not the normal for them. But in all of that, this helplessness of this is what their safe place. School has always been a safe place for them, and the social support that they receive from their teachers and their friends, that was all missed out on. Including having to social distance. And so that's a lot of the things that came up. And also experience of depression, anxiety. One thing I like to think about is that none of us, we might have stayed in our homes, but we have to think about a lot of the things that we go through also happen in our homes. And so a lot of the things that the kids were going through, such as, you know, maybe it was parental conflict, maybe it was any kind of abuse, there's at home still. So again, those experiences came up as well. But looking forward to going back into school, still having this anxiety around getting back, thinking about how they're performed academically this school year, because last school year was something that was a struggle for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And anxiety is on like an all-time high, I think, for everybody, because it's been like a year and some change, and we're just jumping right back into whatever this normal life is that we can get, right? And I think all of us, right? Yeah, like, you know, it's just pretty crazy. And I want to open this question up for everybody, because I think everybody can relate to this question. You know, experts say heading back to school, like I said, will be anything but routine this year. And which means parents and teachers will need to take an extra step to protect children. And I'm just like, for me, bringing my son back to school, he's 6 years old, going to first grade. Like, I just don't know what to do. I don't, you know, my anxiety is on 1,000. What are some steps do you think maybe teachers listening or parents, I think that everybody can kind of speak on this? You know, what can we do to kind of help our kids adapt to this new lifestyle going into school? Tisha, I want to start with you and we can work our way down.
Yeah, you know, really, I think it's about communication. I mean, this is just a time where we need to be over communicating with one another. I think it's really important that parents share their apprehensions with teachers. Let them know what they're feeling, what their children are feeling, and making sure that there is just a lot of open communication. I think that we're going to have to do a lot of emailing, a lot of text, just checking in with people about safety protocols, which are going to be really important, adherence to the science and to all of the guidance that the CDC and the school systems are giving us, but also just, you know, being able to communicate, I'm not comfortable, right, with no judgment. And so I think it's going to be very important that teachers keep the doors open, that everybody leans in. And in a pandemic, there is no such thing as over communicating. Mm-hmm. So I really think that that's kind of the thing that I am encouraging parents to do. Don't hold it in. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about being judged. Put it out there what your concerns are, because the bottom line is we all have questions. Mm-hmm. And so I think being comfortable asking those questions, and for educators to be affirming of that and saying, keeping the door open. This is the year of open door communication. Everybody's got to keep all doors open. And so that's what I'm encouraging parents and young people to do during this time of uncertainty and where things are always changing, right? I think that's the challenge. Everybody likes structure. And everybody likes things to be predictable. And every day you get new information and you have to adjust. And that can just be very challenging for folks. And so I think the number way to get through that is communication.
Yeah, let's make our way down. Crystal, and we can just go right over.
Okay.
Yeah, I would follow behind Ms. Tisha as well as far as the communication, but also adding to change the conversation. And I feel like that's something that we're doing on this platform right now is opening up and breaking those stigmas around mental health. And even for, kids as young as 6, checking in with them for their first week of school. How were they feeling? What emotions came up for them? Being, again, to change the conversation of how things are going on, like when they were in school. Looking at the values and beliefs that your family holds and trying to break those down for the kids as well. But again, just changing the conversation because a lot of the kids need the social support, helping them to find a trusted adult to talk to about this week or about how the school year is going or what they're afraid of for the school year. Another thing I think about as well is the resources a lot of schools also have for teachers. Is the school-based resources, which is important for our Baltimore City kids because it makes it more accessible. And so there are school-based resources that families and parents can ask their schools about.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off of Crystal when you talked about resources. I think one of the positive things that's come out of COVID-19 and the pandemic is school systems are going to be better equipped. I know they've hired more school social workers, just more staff to support our students so that they can bounce forward. There's an initiative called Project Bounce Back that Governor Hogan put into place so that eventually all counties will have a Boys and Girls Club. So that is an extension, again, of some support for caregivers so that, kids can have a safe, environment in the community. Another thing for me is, I would just say collaborating. And I think this was kind of already said, collaborating with other people to help find solutions. I mean, we have to communicate, like Tisha said, communicate. You can't get enough of it. I think one of the things that's come out of this as well is our ability to rely on each other and to rely on community. It is super important, and that's how we're going to be able to bounce forward and show our resilience and build resilience. And another thing I would say is for us as adults to be able to role model ways to cope and ways to show resilience. So those are the things I would say are helpful.
Ashley?
Okay, so coming from my perspective and primarily working with adolescents, my advice is going to be more on the mental health side because this is what I do daily. A lot of the kids come in with parental conflict issues where they feel like their parents aren't supportive, their parents don't listen. So I spend a lot of my time pretty much re-teaching the parents about how to interact with their child, especially in regard to mental health. You have a lot of parents who kind of have old school beliefs in regard to mental health, and mental health is not a thing. Why are you, struggling? You have all of these opportunities, X, Y, Z. So a lot of kids don't feel validated. They don't feel validated in their feelings and emotions. A lot of parents also like to problem solve. So when their kid presents an issue to them, a lot of parents are very much like, well, this is what you do. Do you need me to help you do this? And it can become very forceful and aggressive. So it takes the attention off of what the child is saying or expressing. So I definitely preach about active listening, creating a safe space in communication with your child, letting them speak, letting them voice their opinion, and sometimes not being so quick to offer a solution, letting them vent and then asking them, is there any way I can support you in this moment? And then give them the autonomy to say, actually, mom or dad, I do need your advice. Or they may say, I just needed you to listen to me. So I feel like a lot of times parents take on that authoritative role. They don't really kind of step back and be able to build on relationship dynamics with their children. So that's a big, big thing. Listening as a parent, kind of opening up the door to emotional vulnerability without being so quick and forceful to solve a problem. It really causes a lot of these kids to retreat and feel like they can't rely on their parents for emotional support. And then they seek it in other ways, whether it's substance use, they rely on their friends to be therapists, all different channels outside of the home that really present a problem that the parents are not aware of. So that is my mental health advice.
I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Where were you when I was raising my boys?
Listen, I'm about to say, I mean, that is one of the huge things I think is the stigma of this whole mental health awareness in our community. And you said something very poignant. I mean, you can't tell some of these parents anything. You can't. They feel like they know it all. So I mean, how do you break down that stigma? How do you chip in on that? How do we help in that regard? Because I mean, we can't help the child until necessarily the parents are involved or are willing.
I always tell families, because every kid that comes in, we have to have a family meeting. So all of my patients, I interact with their families before they leave. And pretty much I tell parents that they have to be willing to learn as well. Right. They have to be willing to adapt and adjust to their child. Like I said, a lot of parents are very forceful, and what I'm telling you to do is what you need to do. And if your child is pushing back and doing the complete opposite, there's a disconnect there. So, I encourage families to come together, talk at the dinner table, designate a time for parents just to be more present. Aside from, did you do your homework? Did you do your chores? More so, I know this week was the first week of school. Emotionally, how did that go for you? Were you anxious to see some of your friends? And, just setting time aside for that. In a lot of the minority families, it is very much like a diligent, you're going to get it done, it's going to be done. And there's not really a lot of emotional check-ins. A lot of my kids who are minorities and come from minority families, they kind of come in and say that there is no emotional connection with their parents or guardians. And so I think for a guardian or a parent, kind of breaking that wall down where you're still able to be a parental figure while you're still able to offer your child emotional support. So you are able to do both.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I want to remind you, as we're having this conversation, as you are viewing on Facebook, on 92q.com, on Magic 95.9, wherever you're viewing at right now, you guys can hop in and ask some questions. We'll type it in and we'll pop it right on the screen so we can get some of our experts to answer some of your questions, because we really want to get everybody's opinions and different questions, because parents and teachers and even kids, if you're watching, if you have questions, we want to make sure we can kind of get them answered. Tisha, I want to bring it over to you. Let's talk about the Baltimore Children's Cabinet's 2021 action plan for our city youth, because like a year ago, the cabinet had a different priorities. It was like 7 different priorities, correct? I think you're muted.
I told you I'm going to be that old lady on the screen where you have to be like,
why do we all pause? We're like,
yes. So, thank you for lifting that up, because that's something we're very proud of, is that we partnered with over 200 organizations and individuals. And the question on the table was, how are our children doing? And what do we need to do to respond to the needs of our children? And so we came up with 7 priorities. Supporting trauma-informed care is one of those priorities, which I'm so excited that 92Q and it is really lifting up this issue for young people. We're committed to supporting boys and young men of color, decreasing child hunger, addressing youth homelessness, dealing with young adult literacy. So we have a wide range of issues, 7 to be specific, where we've said these are places where we can do better for our children. And we have a comprehensive plan, lots of stakeholders, and we're just committed that things can be better and they can be different in Baltimore. And really all that it requires is collaboration and partnership and everybody getting on the same page. And so the Children's Cabinet Action Plan was just that process. Let's get on the same page about what our children need, how we're going to invest in them, and how we're going to make Baltimore a city where every young person can thrive and reach their potential. And it just is really inspiring to be here with you and the other panelists, because one of the biggest issues that kids talked about is that they needed a vocabulary to be able to express how they were feeling. They needed to we all needed to address the stigma. You all talked about being an old school parent, and I hate to say it, I'm an old school parent, Ashley, and we do have a lot to learn, right? And young people can teach us, right? So that we can be better and more informed and can shift along the way. And so this issue of mental health awareness and social emotional well-being has actually emerged as one of the number one issues that young people are saying, we got to do better. And so this is just such a great platform for us to be having that conversation. So thank you for acknowledging the work of the Children's Cabinet.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was reading up on it and I was like, wait a minute. Like, it really is great from like the beginning to end. Like, going through it, I'm just like, wow, the city is going to be so much better when it comes to our youth. And I'm excited about everything that is going to be happening. Yeah, I'm really excited.
And I just have to give a shout out to our mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott, who is so committed to young people, right? This, I think that, you know, he really relates. He's a part of this generation of change. And his administration is all about lifting up young people, bringing them to the table, giving them agency, and making the city better for them. And so we're just super excited that this administration is so focused on children, and he's doing a very good job of lifting up the needs of our young people and putting them first.
Yeah, shout out to Mayor Brandon Scott.
Big shout out to B. Scott. Big shout out to B. Scott. That's what's up. Now, Shalera, you work with the Maryland Behavioral Administration. What are some of the things you guys are offering to assist families and children?
So I want to share some great news. So let me see. The beginning of August, Maryland Department of Health was awarded $48 million in mental health and substance use grant money. So that rolling out is starting to come out now in different communities. And so some of the funds will be used to support more than 15 new initiatives to create and expand mental health and substance use services statewide and to strengthen programs and services. I'm sure you all know that suicide numbers are high right now. So some of the money will be going towards suicide prevention. The rollout of expansion of child crisis services. There will be some HIV/AIDS services offered, programs to address behavioral health services gaps for Hispanic residents to support systematic and comprehensive services around trauma and related behavioral health disorders, some workforce development and substance abuse prevention programming. Specifically within our child, adolescent, and young adult services division, we have been expanding funding to adolescent clubhouses through the state, which are for youth ages 12 to 17 to prevent substance use and abuse. And we are partnering with the Boys and Girls Club, like we mentioned, and supporting their trauma-informed care. I know from our division, we visited the newest Boys and Girls Club in Cambridge on the Eastern Shore. And other ones are, coming up as well. We have a great tool at BHA. It's a website. It's www.mindresilience.org. And it has a wealth of information and support for educators, for therapists, for the layperson, for parents, for anyone on how to just build resiliency. It has a great blog that we would like to, have you all kind of go on and look at some articles and respond to. It's a wonderful tool. Let me see, what else do we have going on? There is an initiative called the Behavioral Health Integration in Pediatric Primary Care Offices. We know that many youth never make it to a mental health, agency,
Right.
that families take their kid to the doctor, right? Which is a good thing. And so that is a pairing of social work students within certain pediatric offices to help assess and look for, mental health signs that the person is going in crisis or may need support, and offering and supporting that pediatric person or office. So those are some of the things that we are kicking off and supporting within our division. So thanks for asking, Ryan.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm glad that you got a good amount of money to help make that initiative and all those programs happen. That is a blessing.
Thank you.
So yeah, big shout out to you and the Behavioral Maryland administration. That's awesome. Great work. Great work.
Thank you.
We definitely need a lot of funds to be spread out throughout the city. And of course, here in Baltimore, we need all the funds we can get because we need all the resources that we can get. So I appreciate all of you all being here. For everybody who is tuning in, if you're just tuning in, this is Minorities Mental Health Back to School. It's all about getting the kiddies back to school and kind of getting reacclimated with everything that's going on. You guys can comment. We'll get your questions answered if you have some. I want to bring it back and do like another open conversation for everybody. Sometimes us as parents, we may not see the signs of the cry out for help from our kids if they're going through something, right? What is some signs that you may have experienced as a parent or experience in your field that you could share with some parents if they may have missed? Because, certain things like, if my son wants my attention and he's like, mommy, look at this game. And I'm like, I don't got time right now. But he wants attention. Like that is his way of attention for me to look at his video game. So let's start with you, Ashley.
Okay. I would say like overall attentiveness. So again, as a parent, we get it. Things are going on. And so not every kid is like, look at me. A lot of the kids I get, they're more isolated, maybe in their rooms, especially during the pandemic. They're kind of stuck on their phones. And so a lot of the kids who come in depressed or, who either attempt suicide or having suicidal ideation, their parents are like, well, I don't know. I thought that's what teenagers do. Like they stay in their room, they're glued to their game or their phone. And so I always tell parents to not assume, to always check in, even if your child is an introvert and is used to being in their room reading books, that one night that you check in and you say, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? They could be internally suffering, and that's, their window to be able to talk to you. In regard to younger kids and attention seeking, it definitely is going to take patience. Definitely teaching them like the appropriate time of when to ask for attention and when not to, opening up the conversation of expressing their feelings and emotions, so you can begin to decipher, okay, what is just what we call in the mental health world attention seeking behaviors, and when is there actually a substantial problem that they want to kind of bring to the parent or something they want to show you. So there are a lot of kids who come into this setting who have attempted suicide in some very severe ways. Because they want attention. And, a lot of adolescents don't understand the permanency of things. So they have like this invincible type of thinking where they're like, I can try to do this and I'll be okay. And so, it really takes as a parent having the conversation, is there any way that I can support you more? Like I said, a lot of things are one-sided from a parental standpoint. There's not a lot of check-ins, but, engaging, in an actual conversation with your child, allowing them to express themselves. I noticed that you've been wanting to get my attention a lot this week. Is there anything, that I've been missing that you might want to talk to me about? So just overall, like I said, communication, but in an effective way and not just being a parent. Also, learning to be a confidant and emotional support, a social support, because if the parent doesn't do it and they don't feel safe in the home, from my experience, they will significantly reach for it in other areas. And to avoid that, some parents just need to be humble a little bit and understand that you can still be mom and dad, but you can also, allow your child to advocate for their own feelings and emotions, even the young kids, Persia. So,
yeah, right.
They like to speak a lot for sure.
Right. And then Ryan also having a young child as well. Like, you know what I mean? So when you kind of dive into it, you don't really know what avenue to go to or how to help them. So this is really good for us in the conversation.
Definitely.
Another thing could be like mental health. For little kids, emotion charts that kind of have, different faces for different emotions. So for younger children, you know, how are you feeling right now? They're trying to get your attention. Obviously, you're not going to have a chart everywhere, but maybe you're in the house and you have easy access to the chart. You know, I get that you want my attention. What's the feeling that you're going through? Like, what is the emotion right now? And they point to the happy face. Okay, I see you're really excited about this, but mommy's doing something. So can we talk about it later? They may point to the face that's in distress or pain. Are you hurting anywhere? Is there something you really want to talk about? So for the younger kids, kind of implementing visual aids that will, you know, teach them ways to advocate and communicate.
That's awesome.
I promise I'm on my phone, but I'm because I'm going to use that chart because I mean that's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
When you come home from work and you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing everything, bath time or whatever it is, that chart is good because you can say, I know you're happy right now. I know you're down right now. As soon as we're done dinner, let's talk about this emotion and why you're feeling like this. Because I'm a visual person too. So my son is very visual. So he'll be able to point to it and say, this is what I'm feeling right now. Come on, Ashley.
You know what, Ashley? It's so true because I was thinking about even teenagers, how much of their conversations are through emojis. That's a whole language, right? Yep. And how do you, even as parents with teenagers, send messages and use those visual cues through technology also? So I think I love that idea, Ashley, and I think that's transferable to lots of different age groups because my sons, you know, everything is 4 different pictures. And I'm always like, what is this? Heart, fist, friendly sign? Like, I don't know. And they have a whole language. And so I think if parents can meet kids where they are, in terms of how they communicate, because it isn't always easy to say the words, I'm in pain, I'm sad, I feel depressed. Those are big words, and you have to be very vulnerable to say those words. And so sometimes the way that you get there is through those visual cues. And so I love the boards, emojis. That's just such a great suggestion that we could use across a lot of different age groups, I think.
I was just going to say that I think now is an opportunity for us to really create a new normal and make it a positive one and really be so creative in, you know, in supporting parents and caregivers on what, you know, those things that they're doing to try to elevate and boost their mood and their child's mood. Because the other thing is, because of these virtual platforms like we have right now, I think it makes it easier for us to be able to connect and communicate with parents to kind of give them the resources and feel supported. Because you can, you know, just hop on or call versus having to, you know, drive and go somewhere. And so this, I think, makes it easier for people that do have access this way.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to what you said, Tisha, about like just trying to use the emojis. And I thought, like, you know, also don't overassume and like overthink things as well, because I've worked with youth and like asking them like, hey, like use this emoji, like tell me how you feel. And I'm like, I don't even know what that emoji means. I'm like, you tell me more. And it's going to be like that. Just like Ashley said earlier, and a lot of the other panelists have said as well, you all have said as well, is like our kids lack that vocabulary, right? And it's okay to meet them where they are and ask them what this means to them. Our kids are so creative and they use so many different things to communicate: toys, paint, drawings. And that's why they incorporate those things into the profession, because that's where they are. And so meeting them where they are and being able to normalize the conversation to say, hey, what's this sad face mean? What does this happy face mean? Because you can't assume that the happy face meant they had the best pizza lunch for school that day, you know, like it might mean anything else in the world. But also, as you all were talking, I was also thinking about not overthinking. And I think particularly with like the resources that we can use for our children, because some children think, and even as adults, we all think like our self-care has to be the same way as we see like on social media, like, oh, maybe I'm going to go to the spa today because this is the right way to take self-care. No, maybe your idea of self-care is completely different. And I believe that as well with our kids, we have to be more creative being able to open up new resources and things, even if it's just sitting out on the stoop and looking up at the clouds, you are changing your environment to seeing something different, opening your eyes to things that are in the home, listening to music, aromatherapy. These are all things that we've used within our community that still work. And it's changed obviously in today's society and how it's presented, but it still means the same thing for our community. And so not overthinking the amount of resources we have accessible to give to our children and to parents as well, to offer themselves self-care. As was mentioned earlier, we are the models to the youth, and being able to show them, when I put my mask on the plane, I got to be here so I could put the mask on you. And so being in that same boat to be a model to someone else.
I love it.
Said, very well said.
Right.
Very well said. Now, we talked about parents, right? And, them doing different things to try and, get a little closer to your children, figure out what's going on with them. But to that parent or those parents that aren't comfortable, that have difficulty in that area, how or what do we say to them to encourage them right now? To parents who are listening, like, how can we say, you know what? You need to really maybe call somebody, you need to reach out to somebody, but how do we get them to be comfortable with that? I mean, there are a lot of parents that I've come across just from going to my school, my children's school, hearing their stories about other kids that are in their class and things they're dealing with. I'm like, man, they need some help.
Mm-hmm.
They really need some help. Like, how do you get that parent to make that phone call or be comfortable enough to say, I do need help?
One of the things I'm encouraging parents to do right now, and I would love to hear from my other colleagues here, but the great thing about school is that it is a safe place for children and parents, and there are lots of resources there. Teachers are great door openers for these conversations. School social workers, community school coordinators. There's so many people in schools who love children, who support parents,
Right.
and who can help be a navigator for parents who don't know where to turn. And so, different schools have different resources, but I always remind parents that school is a place where you go to learn your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s, but it's also a place where there are lots of caring people who can help you navigate. And the teacher is not the mental health clinician, but the teacher knows how to get you to a mental health clinician, to a guidance counselor, to a social worker. So those are great places where there are trusted relationships, where you can start the conversation, and where there are people who are prepared to take you to the next step, whatever that means for your family. Right. I'm also thinking about Crystal, and she said that her church family is dialed in. And listen, the Black community has always been able to rely on our faith and our faith-based community to help us in troubled times. And so I think that's also a resource, school-based resources, community-based resources. I think it goes back to Crystal's, like, we don't have to overcomplicate these things. Sometimes it's just being vulnerable. And that first step, I need help. And once you make that first kind of call to action, there are lots of people who will lean in and support you. And I think that's one of the great things about the Black community is when you say help, we coming. All right. And so we're going to show up for our play cousins. We're going to show up for our real cousins. And we could have had a problem with you last year, but you say you need help today. We are just we believe in family, and we believe in leaning in and supporting each other. And so those are the places, Ryan, that I tell people to start. Start at school, right? That's a good place for children and parents. What about your faith-based community? Because sometimes it's hard to go directly to a clinician.
Right.
That's a big step.
That's a big step for a lot of folks.
And so if we can create baby steps, and you might still end up at the clinician, and you might need Ashley in your life, but we don't have to jump to Ashley, right? We can take some baby steps before we get to her. And I think that can help kind of ease some of the anxiety and the defensiveness that parents might feel when they're having those difficult situations with their children.
I love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's the perfect time to toss it over to you, Ashley, real quick, because for those people who are listening who might need you and might need Shepherd Pratt, what is COVID admission like right now? Because I know during the time admissions might be a little bit different. How is it there? Oh, I think you still have us on mute.
Well, you're on mute.
All right, Tisha, you feel better about
it? Tisha, you're not alone. You're not alone.
She did.
Admissions kind of fluctuate. I mean, we have an adolescent, all adolescent female unit and all adolescent male unit. We have a children's unit, and then our unit is the co-ed unit. So, you know, it kind of fluctuates. Over the pandemic, we've had a lot of pandemic related issues. Like our census was high and full. We had like 6 kids going. There were 6 kids coming in. So while, you know, when school is started up, which it is right now, our census is kind of low, but there are a lot of kids who kind of experience those mixed emotions who may have more anxiety. I've seen kids who were super social, like cheerleaders, class presidents, that are actually afraid to go back to school and interact and be who they were prior to the pandemic because that socialization was lost. And to kind of play devil's advocate to Tisha in regard to, you know, letting parents and families know and children that school is a safe space, I kind of want to touch on the opposite side of that. So we see a lot of kids who have been bullied at school, who have been sexually or verbally assaulted at school, who've had negative interactions with other peers, parents who have had negative interactions with social workers based on their own stigma or, you know, being judged by, you know, the various school staff. And so in that regard, that is not a safe space. So, you know, we encourage starting at the baseline for the patient and the parent to utilize the social support of one identified and trusted adult that they can come to with their issues and problems. So if I don't feel safe in school as a parent or patient, if I don't have a church group, you know, maybe my aunt is someone that I'm very close to. And, you know, utilizing that aunt for social support, that aunt is an adult. So that aunt could be a friend of someone in mental health or be able to offer counsel and support, not so much in a therapeutic way, but also, you know, in a way that is comfortable for that parent. That parent could call their adult cousin and say, listen, I'm struggling. I kind of really don't know what to do, and kind of getting advice from those that you care about or even being able to vent is very beneficial. So for parents and kids who've had negative interactions with the school system or who may not have religious beliefs, starting as small as finding an identified family member, peer, coworker that you are able to kind of share even minimally your, you know, feelings and emotions with will definitely, it could even get you closer to seeking help professionally. If you tell it to 2 different people and they kind of say, well, maybe, you know, your kid needs more support, but you're starting at that small basic level, even when you don't feel supported from, you know, outside realms.
And really quick, can you just, for the viewers who haven't heard about Shepherd Pratt and maybe they missed things earlier, what Shepherd Pratt actually offers for our youth?
Okay, so Shepherd Pratt has a partial hospitalization program, or PHP, which is a program where the kids come like Monday through Friday during the day, and then they leave in the evening. So basically they are getting hospital services like they're inpatient, but they're not inpatient. Like they get to go home at night. So they're still receiving therapeutic services, their support groups. So they're in groups with their peers, able to build, you know, up on others' experiences, kind of not feel alone. So that type of program, that's pretty much like the main thing, other than inpatient settings, which the inpatient setting offers the same thing, but in a more intense level. But in the inpatient setting, it's not just you see a psychiatrist, you see a social worker. We have occupational therapy, music therapy, art therapy, yoga therapy. So the kids get experience for free to a myriad of services, even, you know, with them being inpatient. We also have like a crisis walk-in clinic. So especially with COVID and individuals not wanting to have to sit in an emergency room for 7-8 hours. Unfortunately, mental health is at the bottom of the totem pole. So we've had parents sitting in the emergency room for 8 hours for their child to go in front of a psychiatrist and them to say, no, you can go home. So the crisis walk-in clinic at Shepherd is very beneficial. You're able to come in and immediately be seen by a psychiatrist. There's not an ER wait. You don't have to schedule. You as a parent or the individual can come in, get a psychiatric evaluation, and from there, it can be determined if you need to be inpatient, if you can do the partial hospitalization program, or if you can be, discharged with outpatient support. So I think that's very important. It's called QUIC, so CWIC, but it's the Crisis Walk-in Clinic, which is a very crucial, resource, especially for parents who need like immediate help. I believe that they see their last person around like 9 p.m. So for parents who work, who may get off at 6 or 7, they still have the opportunity to immediately kind of receive that mental health support. So Shepherd Pratt also has a residential school, which is kind of more on the extreme side. It's for patients who kind of need prolonged mental health support, primarily on like the behavioral modification side, where it's the kids actually like live in the program. They get school services, they get mental health support. So the MANN Residential Center is also attached to Shepherd Pratt's campus, but pretty much that is a more extreme kind of final resort after a child has exhausted intensive outpatient, PHP, inpatient. Residential is the last step. We don't want a kid to be removed from their home. We want them all to be able to, maneuver and be able to handle their feelings and emotions in society. But yeah, so for adolescents and kids, Shepherd Pratt has a lot of different avenues and channels for kind of different extremes in regard to mental health.
I love it. Yeah, Shepherd Pratt's got it covered, honey. Okay, then. Look, everybody has their moments tonight. I'm in mute because I know it's going to be me. I'm not even going to touch the mute. And he's still going. Ryan, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Now, Uncle Moment, I joined the crew, okay?
I'm feeling good about myself, Ryan.
There you go. See, you're not alone, which I think is a very important point there. You're not alone, right? That's one thing we want to make sure that everybody understands, that it is okay to seek help. You hear it often, like it's okay to be not okay, right? So one of the things I wanted to ask about was when you bring your child to someone, you guys do these assessments, right? To try and kind of figure out what is going on. What are some of those questions you may ask, or what are some things you may be looking for, to identify some issues or some warning signs or some concerns that's happening with the child and the parent?
So personally, it's not like you just dive in and start talking about these things. So in the social work / therapy realm, it's more of a conversation. So in this setting, we don't have much time to build rapport. Kids are typically here between 5 to 7 days. It can be longer depending on the child's situation, or shorter. But so you kind of just want to start finding common interests, kind of seeing what, the patient is comfortable talking about. I always start with getting their insight to what got them here. So I get different opinions. I'll speak to the parent separately and then the kid. Parents sometimes will be very like authoritative and this is what happened and this is what they didn't do. And the kid will like shut down. So in speaking with the kid first, getting their insight, what led you to being here in your words, not your parents' words, not what's on the paper, what got you here? And they just go for it. They talk about their stressors. A lot of things are like adolescent stuff related to like school and peers. But we always try to be very validating, like, wow, that sucks. That's a big deal for you. Right. Kind of understanding that at that stage, these are like pivotal things to them. Like my friends, took me away from the friend group. I've gotten that like 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And for me, I'm like, okay, but I'm also like, I remember being there at 13, 14 years old and feeling, ostracized by my peers, also going back into a school environment and having to be around those peers. So it's very much just paying attention to the individual kind of picking up on social cues. Are they more, shy and reserved, nonverbal things, are they making eye contact? Are they a bit more closed? And then kind of going from there. So it's more of like an attentive kind of instinctual thing where you can kind of let the parent and the child kind of take the lead in regard to where they want to start.
I think one of the things I think about when doing assessments is trying to normalize the experience.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier about the stigma. And you think about if you're assessing someone, you don't want the diagnoses. You don't want what's coming next. And I like to tell, when I was working with a lot of kids in the Baltimore City area, I would tell them, like, again, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And so during COVID, if you feel like you got the COVID symptoms, you're going to say, I feel like this, I feel like this, I feel like this, because you want to be treated and treated effectively, right? But that's the same thing for mental health. You want to be able to get the right treatment. You want to be able to make sure that the therapist or the professional is attending to you in the way that you should be treated. And so, yes, can the diagnosis be scary, and can it be alarming or make you fearful of the what's next? But it's better than the what if and what is now to happen, because you didn't open up. But again, just as Ashley said, is we definitely make it more conversational. You don't want to make it so structured where it makes them uncomfortable, but you want to be able to put them in a comfortable position to answer the question in therapy in general, But that's what I like to think about it as, just normalizing experience, keeping them comfortable, to be open and talking about what they're going through. If your doctor just kind of went down the checklist and made you feel so uncomfortable about the what's next, it's like, I'm going to try not to tell you anything.
Right.
Whatever this is, so that the outcome is in my favor. But no, the favor of like knowing how can I be treated effectively is really what we want to get to.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And we have like less than 10 minutes left. This went by super fast. I looked at the time. I was like, wait a minute.
I'm telling you, we got an hour.
Right. I want to dive into some more resources. And we all know that stress and trauma can lead to unhealthy behavior. And that's what a lot of it. I'm sure Ashley can agree with that. Ms. Tish, can you talk about the Baltimore City Trauma Informed Care Task Force? Because I know that has to do with a lot of trauma. So let's talk about it.
So thank you for mentioning that. So I guess it's been a year, maybe 2 years now. I've lost track of time, that we adopted the Elijah Cummings Trauma Act and the Healing Act. And this was really about legitimizing and really creating a legislative platform to address trauma. How do we create a healing city? How do we build resiliency in our city? Because we understood that it impacted so many children and families in our community. And there's so many, issues that drive trauma: the violence in our city, concentrated poverty, extensive substance disorder. Like there's just in Baltimore City, our community, all of us, everyone has experienced some type of trauma. And so we wanted to legitimize that experience and develop a framework for healing as a city. And it's never been done, right? To legislate healing and to legislate how do we as a city come together to make sure that we are a healthy and thriving community. And so I am the co-chair of the Trauma Informed Task Force with my other co-chair, Councilman Zeke Cohen, who is really the brain trust and the energy and the visionary behind this legislation. And we have about 38 task force members.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's such an impressive group. I mean, if you've ever get time, we meet every other Thursday. We have a YouTube channel where you can dial in. I learn something with this group every time we meet. I say that the Trauma Informed Care Task Force makes my heart bigger. Right? Because I am surrounded by people who love Baltimore, number one. And number two, who love people and want people to be well and want people to be strong and resilient. And so the goal of this task force is for us to develop like a strategic plan and recommendations. We have 5 committees. I am on the youth programming committee because my agency is so involved in youth work. But each one of our committees is responsible for developing recommendations. And the question on the table is, how do we have a trauma-informed care city that supports healing and building up resiliency? That's our responsibility. And it's really great to be surrounded by community partners who are not pointing the finger and saying the government should do it, or this person should do it, or that person should do it. They've all raised their hand and they said, I want to be a part of this solution. And yes, we need government to be the convener. Yes, we need government to be a partner, but government alone cannot do this really important work. So I'm really excited about my colleagues on the task force. Zeke Cohen is just amazing. He's so passionate about this. And it's really great to be in Baltimore doing something nobody else has ever done. I don't think we ever get credit for all the great things that are happening in Baltimore. And Baltimore is a very resilient city, a very resilient community. And I think we're very excited to be leading the way on how a local jurisdiction, not one organization, not one neighborhood, not one, but how we as the entire city can become more trauma informed. And so it's a great group. I love the task force, and we're going to do great things for Baltimore.
Amazing. Amazing. And I think that's very important, working together, right? All the task force, everybody needs to work together, as a whole to make sure that we're helping our kids, helping these families, again, make the best choices for them and so that they can reach their full potential, like we say. Hey, Persia, we got like 4 minutes left.
I think we should do really quick. Let's give out some websites, social media pages, last minute resources that we can give out to the viewers. And you want to start from the top to the bottom? We can kind of go that way again.
Let's do it.
I know Tish, you just kind of went, but we can kind of wrap it up with you because I think we all need some quick, low, last minute resources and websites we can go to.
Everything you need to know about the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success can be found at BeMoreChildren.com, which is our website, and all of our social media handles are the same, at BeMoreChildren.
BeMoreChildren. Okay, Crystal.
All right, I want to be able to give out the resource for the Renaissance Counseling Center, which is actually a part of, in partnership for Morningstar Baptist Church. So it's 6665 Security Boulevard, Baltimore, Maryland. And the phone number for that is 410-265-7291. Again, that's the Renaissance Christian Counseling Center.
Love it, Shalera.
Yes, well, I want to give a shout out to NAMI, Maryland. We must.
Hey, NAMI. What's up, NAMI?
So the National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for millions of Americans. And the state organization here in Maryland provides educational resources and events, statewide outreach, advocacy, and affiliate organizational support. And the number is 1-877-878-2371, toll free. And in Maryland, they're based out of Columbia, Maryland. And the executive director is Kate Fahrenholt. Oh, and the website address is www.NAMI, spelled out, .org.
Yes, and thank you for NAMI Maryland being a part of this amazing event. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, NAMI.
Ash.
I mean, mine is just simple Shepherd Pratt. I'm just a worker here. So it's
more than that.
Not after tonight. No, you're not.
So it's www.shepherdpratt.org. So Shepherd is not spelled traditionally. It's SHEPPARDPRATT.org. The website literally has any and everything. I mean, even people who are looking for a job. Any and everything is on the website. It gives you all the contact information that you need. The number, though, to the direct hospital, if you want to be transferred, even to the crisis walk-in clinic, you can call the direct number and say, hey, I need to go here, there. The general hospital number is 410-938-3000.
Excellent.
Yes, yeah. Thank you to
Big thank you to all you ladies. Thank you so much. for coming out
Thank
and
you.
sharing some wonderful information. Thank you.
Yeah. I think people
you.
definitely took a lot from this event, and we are very thankful to be a part of this. And
Yes.
I cannot wait to recap. My listeners tomorrow, I know Ryan can't wait to do the same thing.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Make sure you check us out Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm on 92Q.
Yours truly on Magic 95.9. Hang out with us. And we look forward to more stuff like this. So thank you. Definitely. This helps a lot of people.
Thank you. This was
fun.
great.
This was wonderful.
Right.
Yeah.
Have an amazing
Have a great night, everybody.
Good meeting
Bye.
everyone.